Hi there, welcome to this channel where we discuss universal laws and how we can practice love on a daily basis using a variety of topics that touch upon our lives on a daily basis. Now, the subject matter for today's video series is all about moving your physical body. And as always, there'll be 3 parts to this video series. The first part is all about me setting out a bit more the facts behind this, the inspiration for this video series, as well as what universal laws are at play. And I'm just going to turn this hourglass to make sure I can see that the time is ticking. Part 2 will be all about the application of the universal laws and some practical tips as to how we can practice love together in the context of moving your physical body. And the third part will be a part where we just summarize some of our learnings and some of our practical tips, talk about any wrap-up points, any final comments that I wish to make, and we may rely on some of the decks that I've got here on the table with me to see if any messages from the Spirit or the angels will arrive in order to make this content as complete as possible for you. Now, if we jump into the facts, the inspiration behind this particular video series. So, quite frankly, I was going to make a video on a completely different topic, but then I suspect it was a vision from, my beautiful angels and archangels, the spirit world, that have enlightened me to discuss about, the movement of your physical body in particular. So this topic is very much, I would say, is led by spirit. And now, I think the most important thing I can do is just be sort of raw and real about the subject matter. Share some, personal stories to my movement of my physical body and sort of my journey, throughout my life up to this point. And hopefully that will be inspirational to you, or you might be able to resonate with some parts of my own story. And so, as a kid, as a child, I was very active. I was the type of kid that played outside quite a lot. Give me a wooden stick or a ball and I'll come up with a game. I always had lots of friends that you could play with, lots of neighbors. So I was definitely a very active kid. And on or about the age of sort of 8, 9, 10, I definitely did some ballroom dancing. You may have seen from one of the first videos I made is I'm ethnically from Ukraine, and Eastern European countries are very much about their ballroom dancing, so that was my destiny as well. And then going into the sort of teenager years, I followed my passion of playing tennis, and I did that for, I would say, about 3 or so years. I genuinely enjoyed that. It was definitely something that I have felt very close to. Like, it was just my type of sport, and I had lots of fun playing tennis and doing pretty well at that. And then obviously when you're in your mid-teens to late teens and young adult, academics have become much more prominent in my life, and I would say that any kind of physical exercise or sports or any kind of intentional movement has definitely gone on the less prioritized list in my life. But I have still, tried to make sure that I walked a lot, especially being a student at university. You try and cut costs wherever you can, right? So you do a lot of walking. And I do recall a few sort of stints, I would say, at gym membership, but I genuinely struggled to maintain attendance at the gym, just because if things got quite tough at university, with exams coming up, or I always used to work to make sure that, my student loan as low as possible, then it would just become an item on my list, but just a less prioritized item on my list. And so I would be one of those people who would have a gym membership, but money would get deducted from your account, but you're not actually using it. So which isn't a great thing, right? You want to be able to make sure that you spend every single penny of your money wisely, right? And so where I'm at the moment is, during my mid-20s, as I moved on from university life and into work life, a similar pattern, I think, has definitely followed me into my 20s, whereby I would have a gym membership, not nothing expensive, and I would perhaps go and be dedicated to making sure I move my body for quite some time, for like, say, 30 minutes or 40-minute workout, and I would do it for a good, months, 2-3 months in a row, but then something would get in the way, whether it's, personal life, illness, over the winter months in particular, and that would kind of get you out of your routine, or I would get extremely busy with, work, and which would not give me the time that I needed to be able to maintain attendance at the gym or any kind of commitments I had for, making sure that I move my body on a regular basis, on a weekly basis. And so where I am at the moment is I have decided to ensure that after I kind of got into the routine of being a mum once I gave birth to my baby girl, and I mean that took a while, more than a year due to COVID lockdowns and whatnot, I sort of reflected on where I was at with my physical exercise journey and my movement of my body, and I decided to actually take a completely different approach. I addressed one of the fears that I had leading up to that point in time, which was anxiety as to having a coach or like a trainer pretty much expecting me and telling me what to do in terms of my exercises. It was an anxiety I had for a long time, so I used to do just my own thing for as long as I could. But I sort of reflected on my journey, and I said, well, if previously that approach didn't quite work out, it wasn't sustainable, right? Perhaps I need something different. And so that's where I said, right, well, I'm going to give personal training sessions a go. It's time for that. I've never done that in my life up to that point in time. And therefore I need to make sure that I do something for me. It's obviously an area of my life that I haven't managed to maintain. And it's extremely important to actually have regular movement of your body, and I need to find an approach that will work. And so I'm very glad to say that, honestly, having addressed that fear and having taken myself through the personal training sessions, right from the get-go, I saw that, all my fears just kind of went away. I have very lovely personal trainers, and I'm very happy to have tried a different approach, and it's been quite a success in my point of view. I've been going on a regular basis, I've been turning up, that accountability, the fact that somebody's waiting there for me at a particular time, it feels like an appointment, it feels like a booking, makes me turn up. And I guess a different approach, something I'd like to share is I've set out a different approach in terms of my goals for my movement of the body. If previously it would be, and some of you might resonate with this, previously it was all about, how much weight I want to lose, or how much skinny I might want to see, dropping to a particular size to make sure I fit my clothes, or I want to be able to run a certain distance. So all of the measures were very much things that I could count, or I could check, the weight on my scale, or I could have a look at the equipment to figure out what kind of distance I ran, or I biked, whatever it was. Well, this time around I said, you know what? I'm going to do none of that. And the reason for it is because every time you don't hit a particular, goal, you get upset, you get disappointed, and in fact, it's not rewarding the fact that you've turned up. It's more a feeling of I'm doing this, but I'm not, working out hard enough, or I'm clearly, not as successful as I expect myself to be. And so ultimately, you get this down buzz. And once you get into the feelings of down buzz, it really doesn't, sustain you, it doesn't motivate you to keep going. And I feel like maybe that was part of the reason why I would not keep a sustainable routine in terms of having um, a regular routine for moving my body. So what I'm doing now, it's all about just turning up. Clearly, the only thing I'm mindful of is just making sure I turn up, and I know that I will have guaranteed positive outcome and results because I turn up. The fact that I work out is a measure of success for me, so it's all about the attendance rather than what I'm doing, how much I'm doing, what's the outcome, what's the results. I know I feel better just for the sake that I turn up. And perhaps this is something that might resonate with you. Please comment down below of what works for you or what kind of approaches you may have tried in your life. Please be frank whether or not they have worked or they haven't. And just also say if something you might be willing to try is, the approach of simply turn up and, trust in the fact that there will be positive results, effectively guaranteed because of the fact that you've turned up to do whatever it is that you want to do in terms of moving your physical body. So if I quickly jump now into the universal laws that are at play here with the subject matter moving your physical body. So the first one that comes to mind is the fact that our physical body is effectively our vehicle, or you can consider it as a piece of equipment or technology that we use when we incarnate into this lifetime on planet Earth, right? And please excuse the sirens outside. Thank you. And if you think a little bit about it, say your vehicle, your car that you may own in order to drive to, work, supermarkets, and just see your family or wherever. We have, regulations and laws about making sure that we regularly check the fitness of our vehicles, and so you get a stamp or warrant of fitness to make sure that your car can actually operate well in order for it to be safe on the road, right, for yourself and for other road users. And the question becomes, well, if our physical body is effectively our vehicle, that we use for this particular timeline and time frame, how often do you actually carry out regular checks on your physical body, right? How often do you do a warrant of fitness on your own body? Do you do it on a regular basis? Annually? Biannually? Once in a while? Just have a think for yourself, right? I suppose an interesting question, right? And so one way that we can all maintain our physical bodies, our vehicles, is through regular movement. And the next universal law that is perfectly relevant to the subject matter is the presence of kinetic energy, right? So if you think back to your physics class back at school, kinetic energy is a form of energy that any object or particle has by reason of motion, and motion effectively means movement, right? And on that, the third universal law is that we have constant movement, continuous movement of all elements that make up a particular atom, which is a particle. But if you think a little bit about what makes up our atoms, and I know I'm getting a little bit deep, but each atom has a positive charge, which is a proton, a negative charge, electron, and a neutron, which is a negative, neutral, hence the name neutrons. So we've got protons, electrons, and neutrons, and each one apparently makes up the atom, and each atom is in constant movement, continuous movement. You can Google this. And fundamentally, every single thing is made up out of atoms, everything. And each atom is in continuous movement. And this may sound a little bit odd because you might think instantly of, moving objects, the likes of animals, human beings, water, things like that move. And that makes sense that, right, yeah, there's continuous movement there. But it's very hard to think about stationary objects, right? Whatever might be in your fridge, any kind of items there, or the table here on the table, the table, right? The chair I'm sitting on, the items we've got here standing on the table. It would be really, really odd if these guys just started moving, right, and jumping up and down. That would be like something quite crazy. But the truth is, fundamentally, all those bits and bobs, including the candles on my table here, and the beautiful plant and the hourglass, they're all made up of atoms. And each atom is in continuous movement. Figure that. So, to tie this all up together, I suspect, and it's, my personal belief, is that because our physical bodies are also made up of atoms which are in continuous movement, it's probably most important for us to actually maintain that movement for the body's proper functioning and operation, right? It makes logical sense in my head anyway, that it is crucial that our atoms continue on moving, and you can assist it by, exercising the freedom of your choice, which is another universal law, the freedom of your choice to keep moving your body more and more and more, to the best of your ability, of course, and the circumstances that you find yourself in. So I'm going to wrap up there for part 1, and we will jump straight through to part 2, which is application and some practical tips about practicing love in the context of moving your physical body. Please feel free to, click on the link below in the description box, and I'll see you in part 2 shortly.